welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotello, Esquire, and Evan Ginzburg. Evan Ginzburg, would you like to introduce our special guest this week?
Absolutely. He's my friend. We work the same indie circuit, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, etc. He is Chris Kravyen, Father Krayven, indie manager and heel extraordinaire. How are you tonight, Chris?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Evan. Nice to see you again, my friend.
We're happy to hear you're doing well, because one of the other features that we were going to talk about today is that you suffered from the COVID-19 virus.
Yes, I did. I came up positive back in March. As you know, indie wrestling doesn't pay the bills, so we need to have a day job. So at my day job, we heard that somebody was positive, and I went and got tested, and a couple of days later came back positive back in March. Back then, we didn't know very much about it, so it was like getting a kick in the stomach. You think you have a death sentence back then, and not only the physical, it plays on you mentally. It was a very rough time. It was a very rough time for me and my family. Thankfully, I've made it out the other end. Probably a little residuals, some tired time, some don't feel well at times, and you don't know if it's because of regular seasonal allergies or if it's just COVID. Thankfully, my case wasn't terrible. I had some sinus issues. I had some sounding like I was underwater in my ears, and that was about it. It wasn't too bad, and I suffer from seasonal allergies, so it wasn't anything more than what I was used to. I do have to say that back in February, I came down with the flu. Supposedly, I don't know if it was the flu. It was the worst I ever felt in 20 years. And I wound up having nosebleeds back in February, too, something that never occurred in my life. So I don't know if that was COVID before they knew what COVID was. I don't know how long you could say. There's so much that they don't know and that they do know and they don't tell us, in my opinion. How long can you be positive? How long can you be negative? How long do antibodies work? Supposedly, I had the antibodies. I haven't retested for antibodies, but from reports, they're saying you could have them up to 3 months and then they disappear. You could have them up to 6 months. So there's just so much that you don't know. And then that comes into the mental aspect of the game. After my 2-week quarantine, when my doctor cleared me, I went back to work. And I went back to work as if it was a regular, everyday, day going back to work. And it was nothing regular about it. I didn't know where to go to the bathroom because they tell you this virus sticks to metal. So in a bathroom, everything you touch is metal. You didn't want to go into a store because you didn't want to be around people. They're telling you stay 6 feet away from people. So for 12 hours, because it takes me a while to get back and forth to work. So for 12 hours, I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't eat. I didn't drink. I just performed my work duties like a robot. And when I came home, I took a shower. And in the shower, my hands started to shake, and it was kind of like a nervous breakdown. My wife had to come in the shower and relax me.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. It was taxing.
What about your wife? What about her exposure to all this?
She was sick for a couple of days, but her antibody test comes back negative. I have 3 children, and my middle child had the antibodies, and I have the antibodies. So there's 5 of us in the house, and only 2 of us have antibodies, according to their test.
Wow.
It was a scary situation.
Yeah, how did you keep your kids separated from?
You can't. We're all in the same house. We're all in the same house together. It's, we quarantine together. My kids don't see their friends. My kids don't socialize. I'm doing remote learning with my children. So I opted out of them going back to school because I don't trust the school system. I have family members that are school teachers, and they say that the only thing they did, the school was painted and the floor was clean. That was it.
Absolutely. You are making the right decision and not putting your health any more at risk than what you've already had done. I don't think my kids are going to see the inside of the classroom this year either.
No, I agree with you, at least, but probably for the whole year. you know, the remote learning aspect is tough because now, on top of my day job and all the things that I want to accomplish, I'm a school teacher and a principal, which, you know, I didn't sign on life to be a school teacher. I didn't like school, so I got out as soon as I could.
Wow. Well, we'll get back to COVID in a little bit, but tell us a little bit more about your managerial career, as I was a manager as well, and so we can sort of shoot the breeze as far
Well,
as
back
managing.
when I was younger, I always loved professional wrestling. It's like my first passion, my first love. I always watched it with my family growing up. We used to watch it, you know, Bob Backlund. I used to read magazines on Bruno Sammartino. I'm a little bit too young to see Bruno in action, but Bruno was my hero. I saw Bruno in the 80s when he was in the Twilight. And I just always loved wrestling. I always told people I was going to be a wrestler. I was going to be a wrestler. So I had the opportunity when ECW had their House of Hardcore out in Long Island. I had the opportunity to go train with them. I trained with Saturn, Taz, and Saturn's cousin, Mako. Um, and it was a lot tougher than what I thought. I was young and I wasn't prepared for it. So I kind of washed out of their program. And then a few years later, my mother became ill and she passed away and left us some money. And with that money, I decided, let me give it one more shot. And I went down to Florida to Dory Funk Jr. School. And I
Wow.
trained with Dory Funk Jr., which was so much different than the ECW training. Dory Funk was more of a father figure. He was more caring towards the students. ECW was more rough around the edges.
Oh, I
Um,
believe it.
yeah, Taz and Saturn were no nonsense, and you were going to do what they say, or they were going to kick the crap out of you. You know, you were paying them to kick the crap out of you. So, you know, training with Dory Funk was an eye opener, but unfortunately, I had an unfortunate accident in my debut match. I misstepped. It was just a miscalculation on where to plant my foot, and I planted my foot improperly, I guess, and I broke my ankle in 3 places, basically shattered it.
Ugh.
I finished the match and I flew home and went right to the hospital, and I was in a cast for 6 months.
Wow.
And I
Talk
didn't
about
step in.
Canadian news.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't step into a ring for another 17 years. It was 17 years before I stepped into a ring again. I thought the dream was gone. I had no ambitions to be in a wrestling ring anymore. I had family. I started having children, wife, you know, the job, the whole 9 yards. And there was a local wrestling show, and a friend of mine says, "I can introduce you to the promoter. Didn't you used to do wrestling?" And I said, "Come on, I'm almost in my 40s. I'm going to do this now." And he said, "Just talk to the promoter, see what he has to say." And little known fact, that just came off of rotator cuff surgery too, and he wants me to go talk to the promoter. This was 2017, I believe, and the promoter was Gino Caruso. And I walked in, I got dressed up in street clothes, very, very, very different look than the character that I have today. I got up basically in street clothes, jeans, t-shirt, wrapped a flannel around me. I kind of looked like Raven, and I went up to Gino, I introduced myself, and I said, "Look, I haven't wrestled, but I train. Is there anything you could use me for?" And he says, "Well, let's see what we could do. We could make you a manager." And the first guy I ever managed was Robert Saint. And I wound up managing Robert Saint out in Rockaway Beach. And it took off from there. It was a blast. One, one card of Geno's led to another card of Geno's to another card of Geno's. Then I did work for uh, what's his name, USA Pro Wrestling. I did a couple of matches, and it was getting very intense. It was taking off fast, but it's like a drug, as everybody knows. Once you're in it, you're always looking for that next high, that next fix. Um, I feel comfortable in the ring. It's right where I, always wanted to be. And I never in a million years thought of being a manager, but I have to say, like, it's so much fun and so exciting, and just the rush of the crowd. And I don't have to be in there abusing my body uh, as a wrestler does. And I have the energy to plug into the crowd. I know how to get the crowd riled up. I do very good from what I've been told, I'm pretty good at being a heel.
So tell me where the Father Krayven character comes from, and how did that inspire? What was the inspiration for that?
Well, I started out as Chris Kravyen, which was a name I came up with in my youth. I always liked Spider-Man, Kraven the Hunter. So Chris Kravyen came derived from that. And basically, Chris Kravyen was like a street kid who was raised and he heard voices, and um, that was kind of my character. And along the lines of doing cards for Gino and other local promotions up in New York, I ran into a fellow called Mr. Big. And for some reason, Mr. Big took a liking to me, and he took me under his wing. And he said, you have to pull this all together. At the time, I was wearing camouflage pants. I had a leather jacket, black T-shirt. I was carrying a nightstick. He says, none of this makes sense.
Yeah.
He said, I've been around for a while. I want you to put this together. He says, I see something in you, and if you listen to me, we can work on something. So Father Krayven wasn't on the horizon yet. We went into a character which was Chris Kravyen, the Prince of Purgatory, and I kind of emulated Kevin Sullivan for a while. And I did the black hood and cape, and I did the face paint over my eyes, and kind of acted a little bit towards more of Kevin Sullivan cutting the crazy promos. And Mr. Big actually came up with Father Krayven. Mr. Big says he wanted me to evolve. He sees something in me. He see where this can go. And at one point in time, because of family constraints and everything going on in my personal life, I told everybody that I was done. I wasn't going to do it anymore. I didn't have the time to devote to wrestling that I wanted to do because my family life was more important and it was causing conflict in my family life. So after about a month or two of not doing anything, Robert Singh gave me a shout, and he says, I really like what you were doing with your character. I'm planning on starting my own promotion. I really want you to be a part of it. I want to sit down and talk and see how we can work things out. And I really want you to come on board with what I'm doing. I liked what Robert had to say. In a business where people are not very honest, in a business where people are not very forthcoming, Rob seemed to know the spiel and what to say, and he knew, what he was looking for. So I said, okay, and I sat down, I talked with my family, and I said it won't be an every weekend thing, an everyday thing. It would be, from time to time, I would just put on put on the act and go do what I had to do. And it took off from there. And I did the Prince of Purgatory thing for a while. And Mr. Big says, I see this evolving. And behind the scenes, for a friend of mine, in reality, I became a ordained Christian minister so that I could marry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
It's not a work.
Yes, so it's not a work.
Or as I've said, because I'm a lawyer in real life and I play a lawyer in the ring, but I've always said the best work is a shoot.
Yes. So I'm an ordained Christian minister. I did one of the online courses. I got the paperwork. I'm certified. And I wound up marrying my best friend and his wife together, which was a cool moment for me. So Mr. Big saw something in that, and he started talking to me and cultivating, and we came up with this Father Krayven character. He's like, a dark overlord priest. And then we came up with my club.
Christopher Daniels had that angle as the fallen angel in his early career. And I worked with Christopher Daniels when he was the fallen angel. And that was a great gimmick. And so I think it's a great gimmick for you, too.
That's what Mr. Big says. He says, like the Prince of Purgatory was more cartoonish, and this is more believable. My gimmick, my robes, my ensemble looks more of like a priest walks out of the curtain. That's like, wow. I come out, I have the robe, I have a purple scroll, I have a silver gold chalice, all stuff that cost a few dollars. It's not a Toys R Us or a game show, nickel and dime gimmick anymore. And Mr. Big, really, I owe a lot to Mr. Big. He took me under his wing, and he's really talked me through a lot. And we've come to the relationship where I call him my uncle now. He's Uncle Big, and I'm his nephew.
Since you mentioned that, this is an interesting point. I'm going to tie everything together with one question. Early in our run, Buddy and I, we had the referee, Alfred Passad, who's a friend of ours. He also had COVID. And he was very seriously ill. He was in the hospital for quite a while. He was intubated. He was on a ventilator. It was no joke, and it was touch and go for a while.
Yeah, they said he was 48 hours away from reading his last rites.
Yeah, wow. and this kid, you know what I'm talking about, right? The referee. Yeah. So, 29 years old, and he said some of his friends in the wrestling community were there for him, but the vast majority were not. So I always hear the word thrown around, this promotion, that promotion. We're a family. Well, if somebody is, seriously ill, you would like to think that people would be messaging, calling. I know you can't visit with COVID, but so what's your take on all of this? Because I'll tell you, I've met some of the best people I've ever met in my life through wrestling, some of my dearest friends. And there are other people in the wrestling community I wouldn't spit on if they were on fire. I know Buddy hears me use that line all the time, but I mean
and there's a few in the wrestling industry I'd actually hand lighter fluid to in a situation.
I've only been in for a couple of years, and I kind of agree with you guys. I have an old saying, you don't have to be blood to be family. And some people that I am related to, brothers, sisters, I wouldn't even talk to. But somebody as genuine and as kind and as nice as Evan knew my situation. He knew my situation, and he talked to me. We talked almost on a daily basis while I was going through that. Mr. Big called me on a daily basis just to check in on me. Robert Saint was very concerned for me. And here's a guy who wants to be a promoter, and he's got 1,000 different things on his brain, and he made sure to keep in touch with me and to see how I was doing. I talked to Robert Saint at least 2-3 times a week, and we're kicking around. Unfortunately, we can't do any shows at this time, but we're kicking around ideas. We want things to move forward eventually. These are people that I've come to count on in the wrestling community. Because, growing up, mean streets in New York City, trust is a big issue. You don't trust a lot of people. So when I let people in and I trust people, it's because they've shown me that they've earned, my respect, and I've earned their respect.
Johnny Valiant once said to me, keep your circle small because any person you let in is, for better or worse, going to change your life.
That's it.
And it's true. It's true.
Yeah. When you let somebody in, it's kind of like, you're marrying this person. You want them to know you. I'm a very open person. My life is an open book. I spoke to Evan in lengthy conversations. I have nothing to hide about myself. And that's just from growing up and life experience. So when I let somebody in and I take somebody as a friend, that means a lot to me. It's like we're friends to the grave,
Well, wouldn't you say that the environment of wrestling is kind of unique in this sort of way? In a way, I'm not trying to make it like war itself, because it's not. But it is in a way that you have a lot of downtime, like while you show up at the show, like maybe 4 hours if you're, one of the people that really wants to work the show, you're there 2, 3, 4 hours before the show starts. So you're helping set up the ring, you're, putting up tables, setting up chairs, handing flyers out, posting up flyers and stuff like that. It's a lot of downtime. Then you have that immediate rush of your match, and it may only be 5 minutes, 10 minutes of your life, but man, your whole existence is wrapped up in that 5 minute thing, and then you're done for the rest of the evening. So you go back to the locker room and you watch everybody else's matches and you talk about those matches. And so it really is such a big part of your life for that time that you're involved in it. And you have these huge, lows and then the big spike of the high and then back to, low again. And it kind of does remind me of that drug rush that you were talking about, where when you're in the ring, it's just such a huge high, and then you have that shared experience with all the people who were there, on the card that you worked with, and so it does sort of reinforce that. It's like a shared rush experience, like a battle, and then bang, you're back into back to slow time again until the next match comes around. I think that bonds people a lot. What's your thoughts on that?
Yes, I agree with you on that. After every match, the first thing I do is I text my wife, and I just let her know, like, I took a bump, but I'm okay. So that's part of bringing it back to reality and centering me, because I can get lost in the fantasy world real quick. I do like the fantasy of playing Father Krayven, Chris Kravyen, whatever. But like you're saying, it only lasts for so long, and then you're chasing that high again. You're looking for the next card. You're planning. You're cutting your promos. You're, getting your merch ready. You're getting the flyers ready. Whatever you have to do to get that high ready again. And if you're in it, you understand it, and as a group, you understand it. And if you're not in it, there's no explanation that'll ever do.
What do you think are the elements that make a great manager, and how are those things incorporated in what you brought to the ring?
Well, one of the things that I've learned is you have to be able to plug the crowd to your wrestler without taking the focus off of your wrestler. So one of the greatest managers of our time, Bobby Heenan, was great at that. He knew how to just plug the crowd in. And, the Heenan family had a lot of famous members, but I think Bobby Heenan was the most famous member of the Heenan family.
Heenan was great.
Yes.
Johnny Valiant said that the manager, and you remember him with the Dream Team, he said the manager is the cream in the coffee. He's not the center of attention.
Yeah.
But you pick your spots and pop the crowd, and then the focus is back on the wrestlers. It's really knowing your place and doing it well, and it's tricky. I've done a bit of it myself, not nearly as much as you guys, but it's a high. It's an experience. Yeah.
I've been to several cards where a couple of the other managers did too much, and you're trying to say, like, Mr. Big, once again, like, he's been around for a long time, and he just said less is more. You don't always have to take a bump. You turn around and you shoot a look to the crowd. Sometimes that'll do it. You don't always have to get involved in the match, every match. It's like Evan had said, knowing your place and knowing when. And at times it can be tricky. You have to be able to read the crowd and know what they're looking for. And it's very easy as a manager and as a fan of professional wrestling that when you're out there to get lost in the match. Like, you're watching these guys doing things that you always wanted to do, and the next thing you know, you're like, oh wow, it's my spot time. Oh,
don't miss your spot. That's always big.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's and the other lesson that I learned the hard way is when there's a battle royale, always be looking up, because you never know when a big foot is going to be coming. Somebody's going to be tossed over the top rope, and you didn't expect it. This guy was supposed to be out, number 8 to 12 or whatever, and he's going out number 4, and he's like landing right on top of you, and you don't even see it. That was Max Justice one time on me. Yeah, those big guys move, and they when they go over the top rope, they go a lot faster than anybody realizes.
Gravity takes
a lot of the old school legends have said to me that they did not like battle royales for that very reason. It was legitimately dangerous, and many times they wanted out early. Forget ego; they wanted out first, second, or third, not 30th. you know?
Take the paycheck and run.
Yeah. Well, they had to wrestle later in the evening anyway.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
So tell me some of the bigger names that you worked with, and what it was like, and maybe some of your bigger matches that you'd like to tell the viewers about that you've done, especially on the West Coast where we're not as familiar with your work.
Um, USA Pro Wrestling, my favorite match of all time was I got to manage Jesse Neal, and we went against Kevin Sullivan, and that is my all-time favorite match. I took 2 spears in the match from Jesse Neal. I did a heel turn on Jesse Neal.
And what was it like to work with Kevin Sullivan, who you emulated?
Exhilarating. Just he's such a, and you don't hear this enough, and I guess he doesn't want this put out there, but he's such a knowledgeable person, and I found him to be a good person to just sit down and chat with. And it was like meeting a regular Joe off the street when I first, I never met him before. I walked into the locker room, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on? How are you?" And we sat down, and after a while we went over the match, and my look kind of emulates his look, so it was like darkness against darkness. On my Facebook page, Father Krayven, towards the very beginning, the match is posted, and I wound up taking 2 spears from Jesse Neal in the match, and I did a heel turn when Kevin gave me the cue, and just like an adrenaline rush that I can't even describe. It was very, very surreal for me at the time. My family flew down to Florida with me. We made a whole week's vacation out of it, so it was nice to have my family. My wife thought I was dead.
back in the 80s, I went to Florida on vacation, I believe 85 or 86, and I actually saw Sullivan's Army in Florida. Nice. Mark Lewin and Bob Roop and Sullivan. It was wild. Those guys, man, I'll tell you, the fans back then, I think, really believed like the guy was like a Satanist or whatever. Yeah.
Well, he had the giant snake before Jake the Snake Roberts, and then of course, he was with Chris Benoit and obviously, a woman at the time, and that, I don't know if that's anything you would want to talk about. I'm sure you probably didn't talk about any of that stuff.
No, out of respect, I don't think it was right.
I would imagine so.
Whatever happened there happened. Chris Benoit happened to be one of my favorite wrestlers, and it's just unfortunate the way that everything wound up, because he had such a stellar career, and what he did as a human being just kind of erases that in a lot of people's eyes.
It's hard for a lot of us to understand, especially as we're learning more about CTE, and its effects on people, and how, there may have been a whole lot of Chris's life that was beyond his control after a certain point, that he probably wasn't in his right mind at all, given what, what we're learning about CTE.
And from what I've read, they said that his brain was like an 80-year-old person with senility. So very scary stuff.
Well, it scares you for the business too, and how Vince McMahon has tried as much as he can to sort of distance himself. Yet, he's the one that's responsible for booking all those years of people taking headshots and chair shots to the head, and headbutts off the top rope and that sort of thing. I mean, he encouraged all that stuff, and now he's trying to walk away from it as if, I didn't know that would hurt people, that. So that's been something that Evan and I have always gotten on for Vince, is that, he hasn't taken enough responsibility for,
phrase ruthless aggression, and that's him to the T. He is ruthless aggression in his business.
Let me throw this out there. Chris and I know many people on the indie circuit in the New York area who have had multiple concussions. One guy said to me he had 16 concussions, but he's making a comeback, and I'm like, why? Well, for the $25 payday or whatever the case may be, at some point you want to recognize your kids and your wife. So what's your take on that?
That, like I had stated before, that's a choice that I had to make. It was interfering in my personal life, and I had to make the choice for a while. Is my personal life more important than this dragon that I'm chasing? And as much fun as it was to chase the dragon, and my family will always come first. As you know, Evan, I'm a very dedicated family person. I love my kids, I love my wife, and when push came to shove, I had to just step away for a little while, and I'd make it more manageable for me.
Well, let me throw this out there since you're the perfect guy to ask. So let's say right now, October 2020, there are live indie shows. How safe is it? Is it safe to get in the ring in a battle royale with COVID out there? I mean, you tell me. I don't know.
In my opinion, I don't feel it's safe at this time. I'm not planning on, the nearest, closest plans we have right now is November 14th. Is supposed to be the big event at LaGuardia Hotel.
How
And
safe? How safe is a convention?
exactly. And I don't even know if it's going to take place. So I'm fully prepared that it won't take place.
I mean,
I
I'm going under the assumption that you, who had COVID, who met with various medical people, would have a better idea than I would. I'm a layman. I
Yeah.
mean, you're getting in a ring, you're getting, even if it's outdoors. I mean, what do you think, buddy? I mean, I don't know.
I don't. I
Well,
don't think it's safe.
and not to make this overly political, but we have a guy like Trump in office right now who is absolutely minimizing the danger of COVID-19. And, he's setting a very bad example, I think, for a lot of people right now who haven't wanted to take it seriously anyway. And, we talked to our ref friend and we talked to you tonight, and we realized that, it's very easy to get it and it can be life changing.
Yeah.
That not everyone has $1 million medical team that's going to pump you full of experimental drugs that you can't get anywhere else on the planet unless you're president of the United States. For the rest of us, we suffer like you did and like our friend did, Alfonso, for maybe put their lives at risk. In fact, I had a good friend who was older in New York City die from COVID
Oh,
19.
wow.
So, I too, understand that there's a sinister side to this that isn't more than just, you said that you had mild symptoms, which is, fortunate, but certainly, that's not everybody's case. And
Yeah.
why risk it? Why risk it?
Exactly. Exactly. I don't feel at this time it's very safe. And from a physical standpoint and from a mental standpoint, um, as my day job, I have to be around people, unfortunately. So I switched to the night shift. I work overnights where um, where I'm around a lot less people. I deal with a lot less more of the public. But you know, I used to just put my uniform on and go to work. Now I put my uniform on and I have to pack a bag and make sure I have my antiseptic wipes, my mask, my hand sanitizer. As you said, it changes your mindset, and then you can't let it sit in your head too much. And then how do you not let it sit in your head too much? Because everything around us is metal. This sticks to metal, supposedly. You could pick it up from metal. You could pick it up from a cough. So being around, you don't want to be around people. Um, it's really tough. It's tough. Some people have said it causes PTSD, which is, something that has to be looked at in the long run. I was having, when I first got it, and after a couple of days of it sitting in my body and weighing on my brain, I was having nightmares. I was waking up with cold sweats. I was seeing things. that I never thought in a million years I'd see. And, you know, I wound up that I needed to talk to somebody professionally. And through my job, I was able to, through my union that I belong to, I was able to get professional help for a little while. And there's no shame in it. A lot of people find stigma to that. A lot of people find whatever their hang up is on that. But I feel that there's no shame to getting professional help if you need it. It helped me over a hump. There was a brick wall that I couldn't get through. And I found somebody who was able to help me through that.
And let me just say that during this tough COVID year, brutal COVID year, tough isn't a strong enough word, there's increases of divorces, breakups, spousal abuse, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, etc. So on. People don't always cope
Sadly,
well.
suicides.
Suicides.
Suicide rate is
A close friend of mine, killed himself beginning of the summer. So anyway, my point being, if somebody needs help, seek help. And I said on a broadcast recently with Buddy, meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong, exercise in general. You need positive outlets because this has been a rough year. Not everybody's cut out for being sequestered. It's really not been easy. So there's no shame in getting help. We're in a society where men are taught, don't cry, be a man, and
wrestling is even more so. Wrestling showing signs of weakness is like the worst thing you can do at any point in time, right? Unless, that's part of the shtick, but when you are, training and so forth, as you were talking about with Taz and so forth. I mean, even as a manager, you're not supposed to, show that any of this stuff is getting to you, and if you show that kind of weakness, hit the door, get out, and I know that over time, you have the weakest link will always fall apart in your wrestling federation because going through indie shows is so difficult to do. You have so much effort for so little payoff. Yeah. As I was saying to on another show, I've been in shows where the number of wrestlers on the card outnumbered the number of fans in the stands.
Yeah. Oh, we've been there, Evan.
I was once at a show. Nikolai and Johnny were booked. There was one paid customer in New Jersey. One. There were more wrestlers than fans. There were a bunch of comps, but I'm just saying it was a great.
I was over at Petaluma for Punk Slam, and we had Johnny Morrison on the show. Of course, he wasn't. People didn't know who he was. He had just finished Tough Enough. But we had Adam Thornstowe on the card, and guys that are Brian Cage was on the card, and these are headliners now, but back then, no, just a bunch of schmoes fooling around. They were like they were literally like play fighting because there was nobody in the ring, nobody in the arena. It was all just friends of theirs. So they're just like, we're going to do like slaps and like 4 feet away from each other, like pretend like we got hit and like roll around kind of thing. Because they're like, why should we get killed for this sort of thing? In fact, that kind of made me want to circle back to something that is a common thread in 350 Days. I want to be able to promote Evan's wonderful movie. But in 350 Days, a common message is that family really didn't come first for a lot of these big names.
It's true.
And you talked so much about how family came first for you. What are your thoughts on how the industry really doesn't make you want to put your family first? They want the 350 days. They want wrestlers who are going to be on the road all the time. And then not pay them anything and treat them as independent contractors the whole time.
Well, on the indie shows that we've been part of, most of the indie promoters, the first thing when the promoter walks through the door, how many tickets did you sell? You know, how many tickets did you sell? How many people are you bringing? They want to know what the payoff is going to be. They're not too concerned on a whole as to who you are or um, what you're there for. They want to know where the money's coming from. Um, and that's my take on the bigger scale too. Is as your name becomes more and more bigger and out there, there's more expected of you. I watched an interview with John Cena, and he slept 4 hours a night, and but this was his dream, and he was doing what he wanted to do. And he'd get on a plane, and he'd do an interview here and there. Then he'd go on a plane and work out. Then he'd, go on a plane and go here and there for another interview. And the guy was getting 4 hours of sleep, but he was living his dream. There was a lot of stock in him. Um, so the bigger your name gets, the more is expected of you, and everything falls to the wayside, and the wrestling business kind of becomes your family.
But let me ask you both, what is the line between doing what you love and following your dream and being exploited? Because innumerable times, guy sells 20 $20 tickets. Okay, so he hands the promoter $400. The promoter graciously gives him 20 back of the 400 that he sold. He's taking the bumps. He drove several hours to get there, etc., so on. What is the line between paying your dues and being exploited?
In my personal opinion, that's up to the person. What are you willing to put yourself through? How much are you willing to go through? Well, I was chasing, the dream. I put together promo videos for people on my own time, and it was taking up my time that I learned how to use different programs on my phone, and I never asked for a dime for it. Taking up hours to put this stuff together, and how much are you willing to throw yourself into it? How much can you give before what's your personal line? My personal line is my wife and kids. When my wife says enough, it has to be enough.
And when has she said enough? When has she said enough?
It started to become an every weekend thing. It was taking away from while I was making these videos. It was taking away from time from my family, and I can be a very obsessive person. I can, so when I get involved in something, I want to make sure that it looks perfect to my eye. And, while I'm sitting there for endless hours, and she would try to have conversations with me, and I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't listening. And she'd get upset at me. And, one thing led to another, and we were arguing. And then it became a constant argument. And my wife and family is more important than a constant argument.
Is she a wrestling fan at all? Does she?
She grew up as a wrestling fan. She hadn't watched it for years. And, I kind of have that effect on people. I kind of suck them back into the life, like most of us who never grew out of it. She watches it now with me. She does understand the the feeling that I get from it. She pushed me towards it at first because she wanted me to live out the dream, and then it just got to be too much. It was just very taxing on time wise. Time wise was very taxing, and she says to this day, I still want you to live out your dream as long as it's manageable. Um, you have a career, and what happens if you get hurt in an indie show? What happens to your career that you're going to retire from at 62 years old with a full pension? What happens to your medical benefits? What happens to, our children and their medical benefits? Um, so these are, as you get older, unfortunately, the wrestling bug bit me, but it took too long to get where I wanted it to be. Had this been 25 years ago or 30 years ago when I was young with no wife, no kids, who knows where things might have wound up. But I don't have any regrets, and everything happens for a reason. I'm still here today.
Well, you answered one of our questions, which is, would you do it all over again? But here's another question that comes up in my mind. What if your kids wanted to be involved in pro wrestling?
I think they have one of the best teachers in the world behind them if they wanted to.
So you'd encourage them? You'd say, go ahead?
Well, from the way I grew up with everybody telling me, you're not going to be big enough, you're not going to be strong enough, you're not going to be fast enough, and I always got the negative of, for every 1,000 people that try, one person gets it. You know, back when we were kids, the schools weren't as are now. That it wasn't as open to the public as it is now. You had to know somebody to get in or find an angle to get in. Um, so back then, it was always negative, 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 and I was always of the mindset of, I'll prove you wrong, and somehow, some way, I'm going to get involved in this business known as wrestling. So with me being, involved as I am now, I think my children would, have a good guide in the business of wrestling if they wanted to get started.
You would just tell them to run away and never and don't even look back. Run away and don't look back.
Yeah, right. I wouldn't want them to grow up and 30 years from now resent me because I didn't cater to their dreams. And if that was their dream, then I would help them in any way that I could. My son likes art, and he's a very good cartoonist. He draws a lot, and we've catered to that. And as long as he pushes himself, we'll continue to push him. And he's being pushed in that direction. But he does like coming to the indie shows. He does like seeing, he gets the rush too.
Let me take this from the promoter's side for 1 second. The promoter obviously wants to make money. He's put a lot of time and effort into it, he or she, whoever it may be. But when you have, let's say, 15, 16, 17 matches loaded with ticket sellers, many whom are green as grass, who really don't belong in there, and the show is going 4, 5, 5.5, 6 hours. I mean, at what point are they taking advantage of the good nature of the fans and, really not putting on the best show possible? What's the line there?
Well, as we've discussed before, less is more. I think if you're going to have a card, you do 8 to 10 matches tops.
2.5, 3 hours, not 5
3
to
hours.
6. Yeah.
And try to start on time. How about that for a concept?
Yes.
What? Don't run it. Don't say everyone at 6 and then start the show at 8.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which is like every indie show I've ever done. I've said I only know one guy who does indie shows on time, and he is like the most in charge person I've ever met. Otherwise, every show I've ever done, they don't seem to care about a house full of fans, waiting, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour before the show starts.
But it kills the crowd. It kills the crowd because it's hot. It's in the summer. They're getting lethargic.
But they're waiting for one more fan to show up.
Yeah.
That
fans go through that rabid range of emotions too. Like they start out, they come in and they're all pumped and they're ready to go. And then they become like rabid because they want to see let's get the card going. And then they become like depressed and they don't want to see it anymore after like waiting so long.
Or tired. It's
tired. It's like, when is this gonna start?
I once saw a steel cage set up after midnight. After midnight. If you put $1 million in front of me, I couldn't tell you who those two guys were. They were two ECW guys. I don't remember. Because you're numb by that point.
Yeah. No, it's a challenge, and so that's one of the things too is that as a manager sometimes you feel like the card isn't going the way you want it to, so that you've got to make your match at least something that stands out, even if the rest of the card is going down the tubes.
It sucks the air out of the room too when it's too long. And then by the time, if you're later in the card, like you're saying, it just sucks the air out of the room, and you're trying to build these fans, and no matter what you do, they're not going to be interested.
It's not a TV taping. There's no way you should have over a dozen matches. It's numbing after a while.
Yeah, it's that feeling that you just don't want to not include somebody, and everybody gets included, but they don't always deserve to be included in something like that. You know, it's that nobody wants to be cut. You know, so you got to have that 30-man battle royale. You know, to start the show, and that always goes a lot longer than everyone thinks. So. We're actually getting close to running out on time, and I want to make sure that you have a chance to promote the things that you're working on right now, and tell us a little bit more about what your future plans are.
My future plans at this time is my home is New Evolution Wrestling, run by Robert Saint.
He's a good man. I like him.
He has a very good vision. He has a vision on new and exciting ideas, and I like where he wants to take his company. So I basically, at this time, with my time constraints and family life, he's the only one that I'm performing for. If it is going to happen, the next thing we'll be doing is the big events. We all have a couple of tables there. It's at the LaGuardia Hotel, LaGuardia Plaza Hotel in Queens, New York. It's supposed to be November 14th from 10 to 2, I believe. If it's going to take place, we still don't know yet. Hopefully, one day at a time, we'll keep our fingers crossed and see what happens. And just, performing for Robert, I have a group called The Covenant. I manage the Omen Rockshaw and Nightmare at this time. And we plan on taking over the wrestling world in Robert's New Evolution Wrestling. With, we do tag team stuff. They've been in singles matches. The Covenant is just a pack of scary, creepy guys who are basically looking for survival, and you're going to bend to our will, or we're going to make you bend to our will.
So it's similar to like the Sullivan
Yes.
family. It sounds like you still keep a sort of a tribute going to Kevin Sullivan there. Also, I'd like to know if you could go throughout time and manage one guy for one match. First of all, who would it be, and then who would you be up against?
Jake the Snake Roberts, definitely. The guy is the best promo man in the business, in my opinion. That man could send chills down your spine. And if he could have a tag team partner, Kevin Sullivan, Jake the Snake and Kevin Sullivan, because as a child, when people were having nightmares about the Boogeyman, I was having nightmares about Kevin Sullivan. And they would go up against the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, if they were still alive. The greatest tag team, in my opinion, that ever walked the face of this earth. So that would be like a dream team for me.
Excellent. And that would be a hell of a match, by the way. If that had ever been booked, that would actually have been quite a match. I somehow I'm seeing a double disqualification where the guys spill outside the ring and nothing is determined, and snakes are involved, and
weapons and
that sort of thing too. Well, it's really been fantastic having you as a guest. How can fans get a hold of you if they were interested in contacting you or New Evolution Pro?
New Evolution Wrestling is on Facebook. Father Krayven is on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can contact me on any one of those. I do have Covenant T-shirts that we have up for. We ask for a small donation of $15, and you can become a member of Father Krayven's congregation and follow my disciples, and we can give you the Covenant.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, is that a Covenant T-shirt? That's pretty nice.
Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and just look for us. We'll be out there, and we want you all to awaken to a new reality. New Evolution Wrestling.
And since we're talking area indies, also check out Titan Championship Wrestling. These guys are running pretty regularly out in Jersey, so they're good people too. Titan Championship Wrestling. I like Robert Saint. He's one of the good ones at New Evolution. I like that guy.
So, so I just wanted to know if you had any other thoughts that you'd like to leave our fans with, and any final thoughts about COVID and what people should be looking out for, and advice for them while you have a moment.
Just stay safe. Keep your eyes and ears open. Uh, Read what you can and believe half of what you read, and take half of that and believe that. There's still so much out there that's unknown about what we're going through. It's kind of ironic because one of the things Father Krayven catered to in his spiel when he was first Chris Kravyen was, I was forming an army for the pending apocalypse, and that was in 2017. And in 2020, the apocalypse is here. So some of us joke and say Father Krayven predicted the future.
And on the subject of health, I want to send out get well wishes to Eric Jaden, who's a mutual friend, and he's been dealing with some stuff lately, and he's a good guy and great performer, very underrated, colorful. So get well to Eric Jaden.
Keep your chin up, Eric, and we're all out here pulling for you, and never give up. That's, as cliche as John Cena made that. That's one of my mantras: is never give up. Keep pushing forward, because just when you don't think you can get through it, that's that one split-second moment that you need, and you're going to get through it. There's a saying that my mother taught me: when the caterpillar thought its life was over, it became a butterfly.
That's an excellent thought to end on. Really appreciate having you as part of our show this week. You're a wonderful interview. Thank you for staying up a little late for us on a Saturday night, but we really appreciate it, and we really look forward to maybe having you again on the show, maybe after your convention, and you can let us know how it goes, or if you put it off till a safer time, perhaps. And want to promote it again, a future convention or future show. We'd love to be of assistance for you on that.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time too. Evan, always a pleasure, my friend.
Same
and
here.
I look forward to seeing you down the road. And, buddy, maybe we'll run into each other. There's no strangers in this world, just friends you haven't met yet.
Absolutely. Maybe you ever want to do a Evolution Pro, New Evolution wrestling thing in California. We'd love to have you out here.
My wife loves California, and we've been out there. So maybe in the future, we'll see what happens. I'll bring my gear.
Anything is possible as long as you think of the future.
That's it. One day at a time.
Buddy, after the show, I have to ask you something.
All right. Well, again, it's been really my pleasure having you as a guest. I was looking forward to all the stuff that you had to say. You didn't disappoint. So we'll love to have you as a guest in the future. And thank you for being here this week.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Again. Take care.
All right, everyone. We'll see everyone next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care.